Welcome back to iTTV's Biology, Form 4. And I am Mr. Gary. I'm with you to guide you throughout your journey in biology. Now, dear students, in the previous lessons, you have already went through a great deal of knowledge. There are a lot of facts that were put to you, right? And we are not at the end of the chapter yet. So today, what we're going to see now is on organs and systems. Because in the beginning, you saw cells and tissues, right? So now we have evolved, and let's take a look at the next part of it, right? Are you ready? Better be. Dear students, now let's get into the world of organs and systems. We are getting more complex because that's what we are, complex living organisms, right? Okay. Now, say that the organs are formed by two or more types of tissues. And the ones given to you are basic organs. For example, the skin, you have the brain, you've got the kidney, you've got the lungs, you've got the eye, and you've also got the heart. Now, after this, what you will always have to do is always try to find the connection between the organ and the system that it plays a role in. Always organ, system, organ, system. Then what we will do? We will look at the system and the function. Now remember, this is just an introduction chapter for you. Okay. Now why I call this as an introduction chapter? Because through this chapter, it will open your mind up to what you're going to see in the next 1.5 years or more than 1.5 years. So throughout your Form 4 and Form 5, there'll be lots of concepts coming in. And biology is not that easy, right? There are lots of concepts, lots of ideas. And all those ideas are put together with a touch and go basis in this chapter. So let's take a look in detail. Let's take a look at the skin. Now the skin is the largest organ of the human body. It acts as a barrier against infection, physical trauma, and water loss. Now students, still remember we were talking earlier about epithelial cells? Yes. And you remember how the epithelial cells were the outer layer of the skin consists of dead cells. Therefore, they act as a protective barrier against infection. And remember, I also told you that our skin is waterproof, correct? Yes, that is what we are explaining back again right now. Let's carry on. It is an organ because it consists of various types of tissues combined together to perform a specific function. Basically, the skin is divided into two main layers. One, the epidermis, and below it, the dermis. Let's take a look at this structure. Now, check out the epidermis. Now, on the top surface of the epidermis, you can find hair follicles. Now, these hair follicles are very important because they act as an important component in the regulation of body temperature. Now, the epidermis is the outermost layer of the skin. Below it, you can find a dermis layer. Now, still remember, we were seeing adipose tissues? Yes, those adipose tissues are found in the dermis layer. Now remember, adipose tissues, we were talking about loose connective tissue. Remember still, loose connective tissue that holds up the extracellular matrix and all those stuff that was quite high-tech just now? Very good. Now that is what you can see here. See that the epidermis is filled, right or not? It's filled. It's filled with this adipose tissue and other loose connective tissues. Get it? Let's carry on. Now, in the dermis layer, you can find lots of receptors, and below the dermis layer, you can find fatty tissues. This is your storage of fat. Can you see that they also show you the blood capillaries moving in and out of the skin? Good. Now, in the dermis layer, you can also find several glands. For example, the sweat glands, which produces sweat, that also act as a function of excretory or also as to regulate our body temperature. Then there is another gland known as the sebaceous gland. Still remember students, when we were talking about goblet cells, I think you still remember, right? Now goblet cells are found in the stomach walls and the intestinal lining. Then remember I told you that that is not the only type of cell. Goblet cell is an example of that type that secretes, correct? Now, what others that can be secreted? Mucus and, come on, sebum. Very good, sebum. Now, I never told you what sebum was. Now, remember, every time you go to the theater or every time you wake up, then after you go to have your face wash, you have your toothbrush and everything ready, Now the next time you do that, you just observe your face in the mirror. And you can see that as you wipe your forehead or your face, you can find that there is a oily layer being formed, correct? Now that is not called oil. If it was oil, then it's something else, right? You don't use the term oil. Oil is something that you use to fry food and stuff like that. Do you like take and fry food? I don't think so, right? Okay, so we call that as sebum. Where does the sebum come from? The sebum comes from the sebaceous gland that you just saw. What's the function? The function is to moisturize your skin. Get it? It's always to keep a balance of your skin. Okay, let's continue. You can also see blood capillaries. Okay, you can see hair follicles and all. Very good. Now let's take a look. The epidermis is the outer layer of the skin and is made up of epithelial tissue. The epithelial cells constantly undergo cell division to replace the dead cells that are constantly shed off. Would you believe it? Every single day of your life, you are actually shedding skin. But you don't do it all together at one go. That's why you don't realize it. Snakes, for the other hand, they shed their skin once in every year or maybe few months once. But you don't do that. You constantly shed skin. Even right now, you're shedding skin. It's just that it is in such a microscopic level that you don't observe it. The dermis consists of connective tissues, nerve tissues, epithelial tissues, and muscle tissue. Blood is supplied through a network of blood capillaries found in the dermis. The sensory nerve endings, which are receptors for pressure, temperature, and touch, are scattered throughout the dermis. These nerve receptors transmit the stimuli detected in the form of nerve impulse. Now students, nerve impulse are actually electrical charges, alright? Specialized epithelial cells in the skin form structures such as hair follicles to produce hair, sweat glands to secrete sweat, and sebaceous gland to secrete sebum onto the skin. Now, since we have already looked at an example of an organ, which is the skin, now there are other organs involved as well in the human body, but we will not look into them in detail. However, you should be able to know them already. I will give you a recap once we move on to systems, okay? Now let's check out systems. A system consists of several organs working together to carry out a specific function. There are many systems in a multicellular organism. In humans, there are 11 major systems. Now, these 11 major systems were introduced to you first in Form 1. Now, let's take a look in detail of what these systems are, and I'll give you a brief explanation about each one, which will act as an introduction for your future. Let's take a look at the systems now, one at a time. Now, the first system that we want to take a look at is the integumentary system. Now, when we say integumentary system, what is this? This is the system that involves your barrier, alright, which is your skin. So where did I tell you you can find skin? Alright, skin can be found on the outer surface, which acts as a protective barrier, or the inner surface. Okay? Now the inner surface can also secrete mucus, sebum, sweat. Okay, there are so many things that are going on here, right? Now that is all put into one nutshell and known as the integumentary system. Okay, all right. The next system that we want to look at is the muscular system. Check it out. Good. Now the human muscular system comprises of various kinds of muscles. Remember still? Skeletal muscle, peristalsis, what is it? Smooth muscle, heartbeat, what is it? Yes, cardiac muscle. So you got three major types of muscle, and all these muscle allow us to carry out many functions, right? Peristalsis, what else? Contraction and relaxation of the blood vessels, what else? Pumping of the blood, yes, carry on, movement, excellent. Now that is the muscular system. Next system, the skeletal system. Now, dear students, you will learn everything about detailed skeletal system when you move into Form 5. You will learn in Form 5 Chapter 2 something called locomotion and support. Now, in that chapter, they will describe in detail to you. Let me give a brief idea to you right now. The skeletal system comprises of the human skeleton itself. And also at the joints, you can find, yes, tendons and ligaments and cartilages. Good. Now, what is the function of the skeletal system? We saw that earlier. Only two functions, remember? What does it do? It supports and it protects. Supports the body and it protects the soft internal organs. Right? Good. Next, the nervous system. Also, I've already given to you an example of the function of the nervous system. Still remember the hot plate? When I touch, what happens? Ooh, right? Immediate reflex action. When I throw a stone at you, you avoid it. Immediate reflex action, correct? And these are examples of the importance of the nervous system. Okay? The nervous system is also important for your intelligence, correct? Now let's say you want to think 2 plus 1 is 3. It happens so fast to you that you don't realize the difficulty that it actually faces. Okay? Now your brain has to calculate it. A certain part of your brain shows this level of intelligence. Next, walking. Let's say you need to walk. Do you think it's an easy task to walk, or is it a hard task to walk? Walking is very tough, huh? You don't realize that. Why? Because you never remember when you learn to walk. Now it takes a human being approximately 2 years of its lifetime to learn how to walk. Why? When you were born, did you know how to walk? Yes, you only knew how to walk when you were 2 years and above. Correct? Good. Next, let's take a look at the endocrine systems. Okay, the endocrine systems are something that you rarely experience, okay, and their effect takes a long time to show. Now the endocrine systems altogether got 5 of them, okay. We have the pituitary glands. Where are they located? At your midbrain. The pituitary gland. Now the pituitary gland releases hormones that, among others, control all the other endocrine glands in the human body. Now still remember, whenever you had a headache or you feel stressed out, what is the first thing you do? Take some kind of ointment and put it around here, and you feel so much better, don't you? Why? Because you are actually stimulating the pituitary gland. Next, we will have somewhere around the neck here, okay, we will have something known as a thyroid gland. Yes, when you were little, you already learned about it. Good. Now the thyroid gland controls the growth of the human body. Then there are other endocrine glands. For example, the human pancreas. The one that looks like a leaf. Correct. Now the one that looks like a leaf, the pancreas, secretes certain hormones known as insulin and glucagon. Now, what do? They convert glucose into glycogen and store in the liver. And when you need to take out the glucose, what do? They will convert back the glycogen into glucose. So all these you'll be learning in Form 5. Chapter 3, okay? Form 5. So you've got to be very patient right now. Alright. Next, you can find something known as the adrenal gland. Now the adrenal gland is also known as the cap of the kidney. So imagine there is the kidney, and if the kidney was wearing a hat or a cap, that would be the adrenal gland. Now tell me guys, where can I find adrenal gland? Correct, above the kidney. Now, the adrenal gland controls the osmotic pressure of your blood. That means it controls how much of water has to be expelled and how much of nutrients has to be kept. So, endocrine gland, example is the adrenal gland. The last endocrine glands is the reproductive glands. In the male, it is the testes, and on the females, it is the ovaries. Now, what is the function of the testes and the ovaries in the endocrine gland? Now, remember students, a lot of them will tell the testes produces sperm cell. The ovary produces ovum. That is wrong, huh? Why is it wrong? Because we are focusing in the endocrine gland. So now we are looking at the testes and the ovary as an endocrine gland. That means you must only talk about the hormones that they secrete. What hormones are secreted by the testes? T for testes, T for testosterone. Okay? Testosterone. Now, O for ovary, O for estrogen. And of course, there's another one known as progesterone. All these you will learn in the reproductive chapter coming up in chapter number 4 of your Form 5. Okay? So, endocrine glands done. Let's go to the next system. We have the circulatory system. Circulatory system is a very important system as well. Why? Because it tells us how the blood flows from one part of the body to another part of the body. Anyway, the circulatory system's major function is to carry out transport. For example, I've got oxygen in my lung, waiting to be taken up by my cells. Where's my cell? In my finger. The cell here in my finger requires oxygen. How is the oxygen from the lung is going to get to the finger? Can I like take this, put it, shove it into my nose and let it take oxygen? Cannot, right? So what eventually we have to do? We need a transport system. We need the red blood cells to bind to the oxygen through the hemoglobin and bring it all across to the heart. In the heart, it will be pumped at high pressure and reaches my cells. And voila, I have a perfect transport system in my body, right? Good. Let's take a look at the next system, the lymphatic system. Now, students, the lymphatic system is a very, not a very popular system, a system that you don't know much about, all right? Now, don't worry much about it because you will learn in detail when you go to Form 5 once again. Now, the lymphatic system, a rough estimation of the lymphatic system, the lymphatic system returns fluid back into the blood, okay? So, there is a certain part of the body, when it comes to the capillaries, your blood plasma will come out into the cells, okay, or into the tissue area. Now, when it comes out, it has to be returned back into the blood circulatory system, right? How to return back? Some of the liquid, 10% of that liquid will be returned into the blood circulatory system through lymphatic vessels. Now, when you do digestion, okay, the digested small molecules has to be absorbed into the blood, right? Yes. Now, only those of them who are not fat soluble will be absorbed into the blood. What about fatty acid, glycerol, and vitamin A, D, E, and K? And these fellas will be absorbed into a structure known as lacteal. We will learn, don't worry. Okay? Now, once it goes into the lacteal, it will be transported through the lymphatic system. So, once again, brief review of the lymphatic system. Lymphatic system, just remember, got three functions. Return fluid back to the blood circulatory system. Transport fatty acid, glycerol, and vitamin A, D, E, and K. And thirdly, it acts as the immune system in our body. It has a very important role in defense. Okay? Good. Next system. Respiratory system. I think all of you are familiar because just after fresh from Form 3, you have already known everything about the respiratory system. Yes, it involves the nasal cavity, it involves the trachea, it involves the bronchus, the bronchioles, and eventually the lungs. The tip of the lung you have alveoli. Awesome. So I think you know more or less about it. What's the function? Yes, carry out gaseous exchange. Very good. Next, let's take a look at the digestive system. Now, the digestive system involves many organs, right? Let's start from the top. The mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, duodenum, small intestine, and that's the end. Okay? Until the small intestine. However, in the duodenum, we can find there is another organ involved. The pancreas. Correct. A while ago, remember, I was telling you that the pancreas was involved in the endocrine system. What's going on here? Something fishy, isn't it? I just told you it is involved in the endocrine system, and now I'm telling you it's involved in the digestive system. Well, some organs can be involved in more than one system. Okay? So, pancreas is one example. It's involved in the digestive system. It's also involved in the endocrine system. No worries, okay? Next one. The urinary system, also known as the excretory system. Now, the excretory system involves the major organ is the kidney. Now, the kidney involved in removing urea or other waste product from the body. And finally, let's take a look at the reproductive system. We already knew the reproductive system in the male comprises of major organ is the testes. In the female, the major organ is the ovary. Now tell me, in the reproductive system, what is the function of the testes? Correct. The function of the testes now is to form or produce sperm cell. Function of the ovary is to produce ovum. But in the endocrine system, talk about the hormones. In the reproductive system, you talk about the function in making the gamete. Okay? Awesome. So now, let's take a brief summary about the whole thing. Multicellular organisms are organisms which consist of more than one cell. Cells are organized into tissues which carry out a particular task. Different types of tissue combine to form organs. An organ is a group of tissue that performs a specialized function. Several organs working together carry out a specific function is known as a system. And all the systems, when they work together, they make up an organism. Very good, students. Now we have done a lot of facts already. And now let's see if we have the facts. Just a couple of 2 questions. Don't worry, it's not going to be very heavy on you. All right, let's check it out. Let's take a look at our self-assessment. The first question, what are the organs found in the excretory system of a human? 1. Kidneys, 2. Lungs, 3. Urinary bladder, and 4. Skin. Now students, think very carefully before you answer. This was the only thing that I didn't give a complete detail to you when we were discussing. Let's see the answer. Answer is D. Kidneys, lungs, urinary bladder, skin. Next question. The dermis of the skin consists of some specialized cells. Name the structures formed by these specialized cells. The answer: hair follicles, sweat glands, and sebaceous glands. Got the answer right? Yes, because we already saw it over and over and over again. So dear students, like you have already seen, the answer should have been quite easy for you because we kept repeating again and again and again, right? Now, what is it that you have to do in order to be successful in this lesson of biology? Now, remember, this is a very, very tough subject. Why? Because there are so much of facts crammed into 1 chapter or 2 chapters and they give it to you to digest. Now, that's hard. Now, how do we do it? You just saw how I did it. We keep repeating them and we keep connecting them from 1 chapter to another chapter. In that way, you won't lose track of the facts. Now, remember we were just doing chapter 2, correct? Of Form 4 biology, and that is. And we brought it all the way to our Form 5 chapter. True? So, this is what you got to keep remembering throughout our lesson. Don't give up and always remember, if I learn something today, I will have to bring it and apply it tomorrow in my daily life. And I will have to bring it and apply it again when I learn another chapter the day after tomorrow and the day after that. Now remember, biology is not all about this book, okay? Biology is more than this. Biology is about appreciating and understanding what goes on beyond your understanding, all right? So now I hope you had fun all this while. Don't get too much worry and all those stuff, okay? Relax. Enjoy every moment at a time. So this is the end of this lesson. Till we meet again in our next lesson, we are going to go and look into plants in the next lesson. Don't be scared. Plants are something that you're not supposed to hate. Plants are something that you love and embrace. Trust me, it's going to be easy, it's going to be fun. Till then, thanks for viewing iTTV. Bye-bye from me.